You are about to see Patricia St. Onge speaking on the Great Turning through a deep culture lens at the UCSC Kresge Town Hall on May 19, 2015. The event was hosted by the Kresge Common Ground Center, Education for a Just and Sustainable World. For more information, visit kresge.ucsc.edu/common ground.
Sego afuego, Patricia Tano ikuk peshli ichuin yon yats. Hi everybody, my name is Patricia, and I also said my Lakota name. I am Mohawk by birth and Lakota by adoption. And I'd like to begin first by thanking you for being here and paying attention and being fully present. And in Mohawk, the way that we begin every gathering is with the Ohondon Kariwadega, which means the words before all else. So one of the ways that colonization happens is by taking away land, language, and legacy, which means children. So if you take away people's land, their language, and their children, you've pretty much colonized them. And so if you think about the history of the way this country was colonized, those were three of the significant elements. So there's a lot of language reclamation going on, which basically means I'm at kindergarten level of Mohawk. So I'm going to say the words before all else in Mohawk. And one of the phrases is Eto no dunhakne ngwani gura. And that means, and now our minds are one. And so the response to that is to. So what will happen is I will send thanks and love to the people, to the Creator, to the earth, to the waters, lots of different things. And I'll say the Mohawk word and the English word. And Tano means and. So, because the real elders who say these, it can last days because there's so much to be grateful for. And so, in order not to spend the whole class on the Ohonda, I'll say a couple of them, and when I say Eto no dunhakne ngwani gura, we all say Ko. Okay?
And if you're feeling that gratitude, just really say it,
Atiatinu Radone Onge Sum'a. We give thanks and love, we send love and gratitude for the people. Edo no dunhakne ngwani gura. Atiatinu Radone Yati Nistonha o Hunja. Tano Okne Sumha. To Mother Earth and the waters. Edo no dunhakne ngwani gura. Titinu Radone, Konjon Su'a, Tano Ohonde Su'a, Tano Otera Su'a, the fishes, the grasses, and the roots. Eto no dunhakne ngwani gura. Titinu Radone, Ongwa Su'a, the medicines. Eto no dunhakne ngwani gura. Titinu Radone, Gagwa su'a, kahi su'a, tano oji nungwa su'a. So we give thanks and love for the foods, fruits and berries, and bugs. Eta no dunhakne ngwani gura. Tieti nu waradone, garonto su'a, tano oguire su'a, tano contirio. The trees, the bushes, and the animals. Eta no dunhakne ngwani gura. Tieti nu waradone, otiton opona, kayeri ni kawarage, ratiweras, the birds, the four winds, and the thunders. Eto no dunhakne ngwani gura. Donsi te wano waradone, yo ganega garagua, tano Te tinu wiradone yeti son a son tenega caragua. Tano otsito qua so a. The sun, grandmother moon, and the stars. Edo no dunhakne unguanikura. Te tinu wiradone kayeri nion guedage, the four sacred beings. Edo no dunhakne unguanikura. Donsi te wano wiradone sun guayati son, the creator. Edo no dunhakne unguanikura. To nyo winage. And now my words are done. So, welcome and thank you for your patience with my kindergarten mohawk. I'd like to say a little bit about myself. I'm a grandmother and a mother and a partner. And as a family, we have a consulting practice called 7 Generations Consulting. And we have a retreat center and a farm in East Oakland. The farm is called Full Harvest Urban Farm. And the retreat center is called Nafsi Yajami, which means the soul community in Swahili. We're a multiracial family. My partner is African American. Our kids are Black, Indian, and French Canadian. And then our grandkids are also Mexican and Puerto Rican. So we have a very large and lovely family that I love very much. And so for us, 7 generations, it's a fundamental principle of Haudenosaunee. So when the French came, they became friends with the Algonquins, and they said, "Who are those people?" And those were my ancestors. So the French were my ancestors, and so they came on the second boat, and then they were also the people who were already here. But the Algonquins said Iroquois, which is a derogatory Algonquin word that means like weasel or something. But our own name, so the French called us Iroquois, and we became the Iroquois Confederacy. But our own name for ourselves is Haudenosaunee, and it means people who build longhouses. And so we are the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and Mohawk is one of the 6 nations that are part of that confederacy. And one of our core principles is that all of our deliberations are made with the 7th generation in mind. And so the other side of that is also that we stand on the shoulders of 7 generations. And you are probably the 8th or 9th generation from emancipation. So if you think about the legacy of slavery and how we still live with some of the consequences of that in our country's history, that's what we mean by 7 generations. And so I'd like us to start by thinking about somebody on whose shoulders we stand. So we don't show up here in a vacuum, right? We show up because people prayed for us, because they loved us, because they died for us in some cases. So there's a lot of power on which we stand. And so I'm going to pretend to light this candle, because I understand you can't light a candle. So I'll light the match and blow it out. But when I do, I would invite you to speak the name of somebody on whose shoulders you stand. So take a deep breath and think about who that might be. And take another breath, and when I light the match, you can speak their name. Madonna Thunderhawk. So we'll pretend that the candle is here, but the flame is really representative of their wisdom and energy that we invite into this space, because it's the substance of who we are. So every generation has many, many stories. about the world that they live in, the life that they lead. And each generation has within it many, many different stories. And there are some that are particular to a person or a family or a particular community. And there are some stories that we share together. So, what is some of the language that we have about the story of our time? Just say it out. Change. Immigration. Technology. What else? Pardon? Sexism. Self-determination. So we have stories that are both challenging and stories that give us strength. So at the same time that we had slavery, we had abolition. At the same time that we had conquest, we had resistance and resilience. So even in our time, there are stories of strength and stories of challenge. Any other words that come to mind? Love. Great. Progress. Education.
I'll put out there too the great unraveling and the great turning. You know, this notion of like the dark times and Armageddon, and like this is the end of humanity, and then this also dual notion of we're the ones we've been waiting for to make a fundamental shift for humanity, to have peace on earth.
Right. So there's awakening happening. There's lots of energized change. People are reimagining the world, even while people are struggling to hold on to the world as they have experienced it. Right? So, I wanted to show a framework. So, have you done the medicine wheel as a class? Not at all. So the medicine wheel, the medicine wheel is a practical reality in most indigenous communities. And there's a form of wheel in every culture. Some you have to go back quite a ways to find it, but there's a circle. As humans, we, for a long time, organized ourselves in a circle, both in terms of the ways we sat together and also the ways we organized our lives. And so this is a framework for individual development. So and there are lots of different frames and different ways that the medicine wheel. So in some medicine wheels, the eagle or spring might be somewhere else on the wheel, or child. We were just talking about a framework where child is more in the east. So this is one that I use that comes from my practice and my traditions. And the way it works is, on an individual level, in the east is our spirit. And in the south is our heart. And in the west is our mind, and in the north is our body. And so, in order to be healthy and whole, we learn to cultivate good relationship with each part of ourselves. And so when one is out of sync, it's challenging to stay in balance, right? So when we do this with groups, so when you are healthy, the center as an individual is well-being. You feel healthy and strong and whole. When it's a group, what happens in the middle is the group is stronger. And so the way that it works with groups is people in the north love tasks. They love to make a list, get it done, mark it off. They like to get things done. How many of you relate to that? I was talking, I tell stories about my kids with their permission, but one of my kids makes a to-do list, and she gets like goosebumps when she gets to cross things off her list. And at the end of the month, she takes everything that's left and starts her new list. She's a buffalo. She loves the kind of the sense of accomplishment that she feels when things get done. In the West is the bear. And the bear people who carry bear medicine love information. So they like data. They like information. They like to process information. They like to be well informed before they make a decision. How many of you can relate? Great. In the South are the deer, and their big thing is relationships. So they like information, they like tasks, we all do all of it. But what comes up for them in a situation is, how will that person feel about it? How does that land with somebody else? So their attention is on relationships. And then in the East are eagles, and their big thing is ideas. So eagles love ideas. So an eagle will see something fairly simple, and in their mind it becomes all these other things. Oh, and then we could do this, and then we could do that with it. How many of you relate? Okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask all the people who relate to being an eagle to come to this corner of here. And the people who relate to being a bear, so this is ideas and information and data in that corner, and then tasks over there, and relationships over here. Good question. So the question is, what if you feel like you're in all of them? We all build skills in all of them. We all have places in our life where we're all of them. Like when my kids were teenagers, I was definitely a bear. I mean, a buffalo. Like, get up, get up. We were getting stuff done. But my natural inclination is to be an eagle. So if you're really stuck, think about when you were 6. Where did you live? Did you live in the world of ideas? Do you have a kind of creative imagination where you're thinking about things? Did you like information? Like, like one of my grandsons was like, there's a Subaru. He was 3. It was like he loved data about cars in particular, but always information. His superheroes were organized by their superpower, so the information thing was his thing. Relationships. Are you the one who's kind of sensitive to what's going on in the room? Like you can sense, people are feeling anxious or bored or whatever it is that they're feeling. So that would be the South. And then, did I get them all? So does that help? Think about when your earliest sense of who you are is probably the one that you're strongest in, even though you might have others. Okay? Ready? Go. So these are the questions. What does our style contribute to a group? So what do we offer when we come into a group setting? What do we need to pay attention to? So let's pick on the eagles and say, what do we need to pay attention to about the deer in order to work well with them? What do we need to pay attention to with the buffaloes, with the bear? Okay? And the same. So each of you think about the other 3 directions and think about what you as your group need to think about in dealing with them effectively. And then the third one is, what do they need to know about us in order to work well with us? Does that make sense? Okay, and is everybody clear enough with the parameters? So what's better for you, to have the medicine wheel up so you can see the characteristics?
Yeah.
And you'll just remember the questions. What do we bring? What do we pay attention to? And what do others need to pay attention to us?
I don't necessarily like it. Maybe it's something.
Have each group do a quick report back, just a couple of sentences, what came up for you in the conversation, particularly keeping in mind what's useful for the whole group to hear. Okay? So shall we start with the deer? Over here? Here.
Hi everyone.
Stand up.
My group from Deers, we all talked about how important relationships are in terms of everything that we do in life. Every person we talk to, where we go, it's about connecting and relating to someone else. And it's very important to be aware of how you're feeling, how others are feeling as well. And a challenge to that could be that we I don't really know how to word this. Would you help me? Yeah. When others don't pick up on how we're feeling or someone else within the area, it can be kind of challenging because they're so oblivious to how this one person can affect the whole entire group. And something that we also need to pay attention to is how just other people have different perspectives. So not everybody may use relationships as a priority in terms of like decision making. And it's very important to just be able to see and open yourself up to different perspectives. And I think that applies for all the other directions as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Linda. So we're also the Deers. And something that I mentioned is that we're like children. We really are. Like we want to matter and belong. Think about like you as a child pestering your parents, like look at me, pay attention to me. And in a way that's like going back to the Deers where it says child and watcher and keeper of the heart, and everything kind of revolves in the heart. So that's what we kind of mentioned. Yeah.
Great. Anybody else? Right.
Hi, I'm Jenna. So we're also the Deers, and we focused mostly on question number 2. So what the other groups need to know about us and how we can work well together. So with the buffalo, we kind of came down to like, don't tread on us, because we're kind of at opposite ends here, where we're a little more sensitive and with all of your tasks and fast-pacedness, it can be a bit overwhelming for the deer. And then eagle. Okay, so you guys are visionaries. Where are the eagles? Okay. So you guys are the visionaries, and you need to know that we, the deer, also are visionaries. We have a lot of ideas, and we just may be a bit quieter about it. So like giving the space to ask our opinions or our thoughts to help change the world with your great visions. And then the bears. Oh yeah, okay. So the deer, we live in this wild space of the heart, and we can help the bears kind of drop down from their head and move into their heart. And likewise, you guys can help us think from our minds instead of our hearts.
Anybody else?
So I guess everybody else kind of touched on this, and the deers being the one. I don't know, are you guys deers too? Oh, never mind, not the last ones. We talked about how we really observe a lot, and we're always kind of like watching what everybody else is doing, and at the same time, we're very concerned with others, but at the same, like we are kind of selfless in that way, and we're not really thinking about ourselves, so it's kind of important for us to remember, especially working in a group, about self-thought and thinking about yourself instead of constantly just reaching out to others. But it's also a really good quality to be an observant person. Anybody else? Oh yeah, and we're also like mediators with issues is something that we talked about for a while. And so like we're always kind of like trying to figure out what the conflict is and how we can figure it out.
Okay, kind of what they were mentioning about facilitating and mediating. We had similar ideas in terms of working groups. We would want to kind of make sure that the deer make sure that everyone is on task, everyone had all the motions are being kept out of what's happening. Making sure tensions are low, no one's getting off task or getting out of hand. I'm particularly, I have two brothers, I'm the middle child, so I've done a lot of mediating in my life and working together to keep everyone in a friendly working relationship. So I kind of fixed in with the watcher as well, kind of watching over the group as a general, making sure everything goes smoothly.
Hey, so when we're the Bears, what our group discussed was one of the biggest contribution that we can make is like a well thought out logical plan and follow up in terms of getting a project done. Something that you guys need to know about us is that we really do spend a long time and like kind of put our heart into making a great logical plan, and we need your patience. And also, if you don't like the idea, please be careful about shooting us down too hard, because it's like kind of hurts after all that work. And so when we're working with the other groups, we do want to keep in mind that people might move more quickly than we do, and that we do need to keep it in mind, like interpersonal relationships, and that can become more about the big picture rather than the people involved.
Great.
Kind of described our group as a whole there. We're really the rational ones. We keep track of information. We kind of keep other groups in check rather than we kind of let the dreamers know whether they're dreaming too big, whether it's actually, reachable, plausible. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to add something?
Well, as Bears, we basically know all the things. Everyone else knows only some of the things. So we can tell you when some of the things are correct or not, and based on reality. So that's what we're here for.
So we are the Bears, and another thing. So since we are the data gatherers and that informational side, we like to take our knowledge and share it with other people as well. We like to get that knowledge back, and what we can share with other groups and what other groups should wash out is we are the rational ones. So the deer, they are the more emotional spectrum. So they're kind of be clashing at sometimes, but we could work together, and again, like someone said earlier, they could share the heart with the mind. We can teach each other from that. With the buffalo, since they're very list-oriented, we like to think about things. We like to take our time. We like to think about that, and the buffalo have a very short task. So give us our time, give us our space. And then with the eagles, they're the visionaries, so they're the ones who are very, very like creative and very outgoing in that aspect, and we're the ones, kind of like on the opposite spectrum. We're just like, settle down with those ideas, guys. But we can still, work together, obviously. Bears.
We're delegating back here with the buffalo, trying to understand the task at hand. You moved one of my came over here like, we can talk about what's happening, we can organize this. It's really funny, actually. Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting about being in the Buffalo group is, well, we really like organizing, like you said, but also like keeping like power balance in track. I think it's really interesting if a buffalo like kind of like takes over the situation. It's kind of like, hey, how's it going? What's going on? I know I don't know much about this, but I would love to delegate. And I think that's also a cool aspect of being a buffalo as well, is like helping balance these like amazing ideas from the eagles. And I guess a suggestion from if you're an eagle, sometimes all the ideas are like so incredible, but also like so overwhelming. It's like, okay, cool. How do we do step one, and which one is step one again? And like it's really cool, and I think it's really awesome that eagles like have, because I mean we're talking with a fellow eagle, and we just really enjoy how eagles like drive us and like fuel us with these ideas, because otherwise we would be doing more monotonous tasks of organizing, which is still fun. And with bears, like having all of the like data and I guess some logical aspect. I think buffaloes are more of like, oh, I like to float in whatever task and like do lots of things, and they're interested in everything. And bears really like dive in and understand like focusing on certain ideas, and that's really important. Deers. I closely relate to the deers. Really into relationships, also fragile. Yeah, I really enjoy how I think we kind of went over how deers like watch over, and I think deers keep buffaloes really in check too, with like understanding like, oh hey, like you're not the only one in this like situation, and it's like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a lot of talking. Does anyone else want to?
I think in terms of like working with us and the way that other groups interact with us, like I mean kind of those stressful sentences in the English languages, we'll figure it out later. So just in terms of like, I think we're very focused on like keeping things on track, and just to sort of keep that, and I think that's just something that I can probably say stresses us out if things get really derailed, regardless of from which group.
Okay. Yo, buffaloes, you guys gotta help me out here. Y'all gotta perform. Love y'all. Anyways, me, buffalo. Okay, to be honest, hello? Okay. To be honest, I was like, where should I go? I fit in all the criteria. I'm just like a little butterfly that flies everywhere. So I just did it with the buffaloes, and then I thought about the buffaloes, and I asked them, what's the buffalo about? And then they're like, I don't know, do you do like a check-off list or something? And I was like, yeah, I do that. And then so now I'm thinking about that, and for the buffalo role, I guess like it's more like being able to get things done in a timely fashion matter, you know? And for me, I like to-do lists because I forget a lot, and I always tell people like, yeah, remind me tomorrow. I think I'll remember. And so I think that's an important role, but it also like, in a way, to be like a buffalo is like being able to work with others and, you know, making sure that like the things you're supposed to do is supposed to be done, so the other people could also like do the work, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Yeah. Am I making sense? All right, cool. Thanks. Anyone else?
So does that represent both groups up there? Okay, let's hear from the church.
we're the other part of the Buffalo clan. So basically, yeah, we like to take initiative and have play kind of a leadership role. And just, we like to get stuff done, not dilly-dally around too much. But we also work really well with other people. And we kind of utilize all the kind of special elements that the others have. So we want to get things done, and the Eagles have all these great ideas and all these visions, and we kind of narrow down which are the best visions to use. We go talk to the Bears who know everything. We're like, yo, which one's the best one to do? And then we figure out what the best plan is, and we check in with the deer to make sure that there's no negative repercussions and that everyone's going to be happy and benefit from it. So we kind of just play that leadership role into figuring things out.
I feel also that as Buffalo, we like to take the tasks at hand and just go ahead and put them in an organizational way. I think I speak for a lot of us in our group. We all kind of maintain our tasks, maybe in calendars, we maintain them and separate the big events to smaller portions so we can just go ahead and knock those tasks out. I think that where we want to recognize the passion for all the events that are going to happen in our lives, we look at the deer, as well as when the Eagles are popping out with all these ideas, we try and rationalize those and go to the bear to go ahead and just help us with what other insight we might need, seeking some counsel from them.
I'll speak. Yeah, I'm an eagle. I'm going to talk about it. Well, as we were discussing, as been said before, we're just full of all these ideas, and it's fun because we're all pretty much full of energy and down all the time to just get these really cool ideas going and be open to everyone, like conversation starters. And I think it's important for us to have you guys in a relationship to kind of make these things happen. Because we were saying, like, we get these things going, but we kind of do rely on the other people, like planners, go-getters. Not that we don't do that ourselves, but it's nice to have those like firm building blocks by our side to help these inspirational, warm, fun things that are coming to life inside of us kind of get to be a realistic plan. Anyone else?
Great. So, also, I'd say as Eagles, we're kind of innovators in a lot of ways. So, if, for instance, a buffalo has a list, we're most likely to be like, scratch it. We're starting from scratch. We're doing something completely different. So that can kind of upset some people. Also, I find that with the deer, we could be really critical of your idea and mean it at like no offense, but you guys might take it that way. So you need to be a little more cautious about that. And yeah, that's what we got.
I think Eagles, I think, no pun intended for the Bears, but sort of bear with us because a lot of the time the information that you have at hand is not what we have envisioned and we have like taken. So sometimes an idea might sound really crazy or really weird and people are going to be like, you're crazy or whatever, but that's sort of where we come in. We're trying to find different patterns and different things to do. We're trying to break kind of like old systems. And for the deer, we ask that you understand that we have good intentions with all the things that we do, and sometimes an idea might sound insensitive or might sound like it's gonna, and the same for the buffalo, like just know that we have good intentions and that not everything sounds accurate, but it'll maybe work out in the end. So we rely on each other.
Alrighty, so we as Eagles decided that we have the easiest capability to lead the situation and assess it from above, and then you come back to us and we'll give you as much advice as we can, even though we don't necessarily follow our own advice like ever. we tend to usually give good advice at the end, but then we say, I don't really know, so say that we give your advice.
And one more thing I thought of with bears, you guys are really traditional, and we really need to respect that as Eagles because a lot of our ideas are really new, but we also need to hold on to the good things that are traditional and from the past that we might lose if we replace everything with new ideas. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Okay, so imagine you have a project that you're getting ready to start. Imagine if they say, okay, do this in teams of 6 or 7 or 8, whatever it is. And you look around and everybody in the team is an eagle. How would that work? Would you get anything done? You'd have a lot of great ideas for what the project would be. What if you had only buffaloes? What would happen? So you'd have a lot of independent tasks, independent people getting things done with, sometimes it's hard to get the big picture if you're zooming in on the to-do list. So the planning process for the project would be very challenging if it were all buffaloes. What if it were all bears? Your whole team is all bears. Yeah. So it would turn into a research project because bears need more information. They often have a hard time stepping into doing something because they really need to feel fully informed. And there's a level at which we can't ever be fully informed, right? And what if it was all deer? Potluck, social, checking in, lots of check-ins with deer, right? So let's start again. And what if you had everything but an eagle? Right, it's easy to become stagnated. It's easy to get focused on, if you get stuck on your project, it's usually an eagle who can step back and say, hey, wait a minute, here's an idea. So when you get stuck, it's good to have eagle energy. And we all have all of those energies. When we recognize them and are able to utilize them, we grow as people. But there are some of us who that's our natural inclination. So what if you had everybody but a buffalo? It could very well be disorganized. Right. So there wouldn't be a to-do list. You wouldn't have a work plan. You wouldn't know what comes next. Or it would be harder. It's not that you couldn't do it, but it would be harder without any buffalo energy. What if you had no bears? You could make poor choices. You could make uninformed decisions. So you might say, let's move forward with this. Oh, that's a great idea, let's move forward with it. Yeah, I feel good about that. And then you find out there's a whole body of information about your project that nobody looked for that information. So they bring, and what if you had no deer?
No community.
No community. It's harder to build community if there's no deer energy. It's also usually less fun. Because if everybody's doing their thing, and particularly if buffaloes are focused on tasks, and the bears are looking for information, and the eagles are thinking about ideas, nobody's saying, hey, let's eat. Right? Yeah. So the shorthand for how you get to group strength, which is really what's at the center of the medicine wheel for teams, is the eagle says, oh, I have an idea. And the buffalo says, let's get it done. And the bear says, let's do it well. And the deer says, let's make sure everybody's on board. And so the whole team works together, and you are much more likely to have a really successful project. So as you think about the work in your life, your relationships, like I'm an eagle, my first hire when I'm building a team is a bear. Because I can get into the place of, oh, wow, and then we could do this, and then we could do that, and then we could do this, and then I need the bear to say, okay, where are we going to get the money for that? Or do we have enough information to actually make that happen? Because I tend to be really like, woo, big ideas. So I just wanted to share that with you as a way to help you, or to invite you to think about how you can organize your work life, your school life, whatever it is, if you're building a team, to see how they really are complementary. And sometimes the ones who are opposite, so buffaloes are more likely to be aggravated by deer, and deer are more likely to be aggravated by buffalo. And the same with the eagles and the bears. They tend to be frustrated by each other. But when we see the whole circle, we see the value that each one brings. And that's a way to think about interpersonal relationships. But it's also a way to think about movement building. So we're in a time where we need to reimagine the structures that will take us to the social fabric that we want. We need somebody to stand in opposition to the destructive structures that we have now. So the eagle is the one who's reimagining the world and raising consciousness. The buffalo, and if you think about the great turning, right, so the holding action is the buffalo. They're the ones who are saying, Black Lives Matter. I don't know more. We get to immigration. All of the people who are saying, these systems that we're living under right now are broken, and we're going to stop them. That's the North. That's buffalo energy. And the eagles are saying, so what is the world we imagined? How do we want to relate to each other across gender and age and race and class? And then the deer are saying, there are a lot of broken relationships in the world. And so if we draw a beautiful picture of the world we want, and we say no to what is, and then the bear say, this is a structure. So my partner's working on a local currency for Oakland. We're going to have our own money by the end of the year. That's a structure that will bring $30 million of resources that right now get earned in the city and taken out to other communities. But by creating a local currency, city staff, parking tickets, all of that can get paid in local currency. And so that'll circulate the money in Oakland to the tune of about $30 million a year. That's going to change the way Oakland operates as a city. That's a new structure. That's an alternative structure. It's not new, but it's alternative. So he's got a lot of bear energy because he's always thinking about new structures. And then the deer are the ones who say, there are so many broken relationships. Yes, all of those forms of oppression are wrong, and we stand against them. And we've all been wounded by them. And so what needs to happen? And so restorative practices and other kinds of healing work happen with the South. So you can see that the medicine wheel is really an organizing principle for personal development, for organizational development or team building, and for social movements as well. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
I love it. It's great to see, we talked about medicine wheels and like you said earlier, slight nuanced differences between, what is in the East and what is in the South. And it's just such a beautiful and whole bundle right there. There's such a power in the sort of separation, but they're not fragmented. They're differentiated, but ultimately there's a wholeness to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. Yep.
What is the significance of putting child, adolescent, adult, and toddler as their categories?
So the question is, what's the significance of child, adolescent, adult, and elder? So there's a way in which we move around the medicine wheel, and so the East is the portal between the worlds. So this, in Native culture, walking this is called walking the red road. That's the road of this earth. And the blue road is the road of the ancestors. And so the portal between the two is through spirit. So that's the East. So that's where the elders reside. And so then kind of working your way back around. I think there's a natural inclination for children to be engaging from a heart space. And then in our adolescence is when we're gathering information. We're learning a lot. We're building our own structure. Who we are and who we will be in the world gets defined for us during our adolescence. And then who gets stuff done? It's the grown-ups usually. That's the time in our life when we work. That's the householder time. And then the elder time is when we're kind of thinking our way, praying our way, engaging our way into the time of the ancestors. So a friend of mine said, we're entering the third trimester of our lives. So I'm moving into the East, and I can feel it. There was a time when I was working 16-hour days and getting stuff done and had a full-time job in graduate school, had 3 kids at home. I was just working a lot, and in that period I was in my buffalo phase, and now I feel like I'm easing into eagle. So you have your natural inclination to be one of them, but also it's a journey through all of them, because when we finish, we are practiced in the wholeness of being, right? Mm-hmm.
So this is more of an observation, but the bear is associated with adolescence and tradition, whereas the eagle is, I guess, progress, ideas, and also old age, and it just seems kind of counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting. Somebody else mentioned that once, that those two seem like they're, and there's probably a medicine wheel where they are in opposite positions. This is the one that I learned, and so, yeah, that's a really, I'll have to check with the elders about that, because it's come up twice now. You had Oh, sorry. It seems counterintuitive that the keepers of the tradition are the adolescents, and the the ideas are the old people. That it might be the other way around, that the elders would be the keepers of the tradition. Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that it kind of like consolidates a lot of stuff that we can learn in this part regarding creating social movements, creating change that's inclusive of all the different perspectives and ideas that people can bring to the table. So you can't just have a social movement and that are destroying a system. You have to have people who are envisioning a new system. You have to have people that are making sure everyone's doing okay. And also on an individual level, as change makers, it's important for us to make sure that we making sure that our relationships and our emotions are in check, and making sure that we're getting stuff done. So also on an individual level, that like creates change as well.
Right. That's a great observation. And I think that one of the things to hold in this is that all of us have deep, deep, deep body memory of living in a frame of a circle. So Western culture is a little bit linear, you know, from A to B. And Western culture has underneath it culture that is circular. And all other cultures also have a circular frame at some point in their development. And so this is in a way a returning to something that we have a deep internal knowledge about. So it feels resonant because we have a deep memory of it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, kind of building off what you just said, Melly and Patricia, that for some of my classes, we started by like introducing the medicine wheel, like on the first day, like here's what the class is going to be about. We're going to go on this journey, and it wasn't that powerful. I found over the years, like people were like, "What? This doesn't make much sense," because a lot of we've been trained in this point A to point B, and so over the years, I've decided just to like get in it and do it and experience it, and then like at the end of the quarter, kind of pull the curtain back a little bit and say, actually, there's kind of a framework here, and it's this medicine wheel framework, and here's a little bit of how it works, and then people are like, oh, that's what we've been doing all quarter, or like, like you said, Matt, like that, oh, that is a conceptual framework that kind of matches what we've been doing in collaborative learning.
Great. Okay. So we only have about 15 minutes. So I was going to do the iceberg, but I think I want to just tell a story and then do question and answer comments. Or how's that? Does that make sense? Okay. So I'll have to come back next time do the deep culture stuff, the iceberg. But I just wanted to tell you about how this is getting played out in our life. So my partner was a city council member in Oakland, and I was the founding director of Habitat for Humanity. And then I went to San Francisco, get started, and then I became the regional director of Habitat. And he left office and became the regional director of American Friends Service Committee, which is a Quaker social justice organization. And we raised our blended family. We have 6 daughters. 2 of them are married to women, 3 of them are married to men, and 1 is single, divorced. She's got 2 kids. We have 6 grandkids, and they range in age from 23 to 2. And everybody lives in Oakland. We're very grateful for that. And when the last kid moved out for the last time, because we had some boomerang stuff going on for a while, Wilson and I looked at each other and said, we've got this 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. We've got a big garage that's been converted into an office. We've got a little outbuilding that was a meditation room. We have an endless pool with a hot tub and a big garden. What do we want to do with this space? And so as we were contemplating that, our neighbors came to us, and they have a 12, so our lot is about 6,000 square feet. Theirs is 12,000, so it's almost twice, well, it is a little under twice the size of our lot. And they said, we're going into foreclosure. And they were in their mid-60s, and her mom was 93, and they said, we really would like to stay for another 3 or 4 years. And so we said, well, what would it take? And they gave us a dollar figure, and we said, okay, what if we, because the back was just blackberry bushes. It was like almost 1/3 of an acre of blackberry bushes. And so we said, what if we leased that back space, and half the money went just to pay the rent for it, and the other half went toward a down payment on your house, so that when you retire, we can take over the house. And you promise to sell it to us if we can buy it at that time. And so we agreed to that, and at that time is when my adoption was happening, my adoption ceremony, so that was in 2011. And so we got the land, we did a blessing of the land, we did the ceremony, and that we decided at that point would always be dedicated for ceremony. And then we found out about this Howard Thurman quote. Howard Thurman was a mystic who lived in San Francisco, who created an intentionally interracial congregation. And one of his quotes, he's brilliant, and one of his quotes is, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that, because the world needs people who've come alive." And so we gathered our many children and grandchildren and said, what makes you come alive? And it was such a powerful question. And so our youngest daughter, whose husband had been in prison for selling marijuana, 8 years in prison for selling a joint. He's African American. Those two things are not unrelated. They said, we want to grow weed. That's what makes us come alive, growing weed. And so we went to the clinic and we got cards and we made them our caretakers. And they started growing weed. And then they were like, how are we going to do this? You know, we can't sell it because that's still illegal. So they started a consulting practice where all my middle-aged friends would come to them and say, I have back stuff, or my joints, or I have headaches, or stuff. And they would consult with them, and they'd get paid for consulting, and then they'd give them the weed. And so it was a great little plan. And then in the middle of the night, we had you can grow 99 plants with one license, one thing, one patient, whatever it is. Oh, we're recording it. So they became our caregivers, and we had about 30 plants in our big garden, and they had bells on them and stuff, and we had dogs, and still somebody came in the night and stole the weed. But in the meantime, as they studied cannabis, they realized this is medicine. This isn't a joke. It really is medicine. And then they were like, and chamomile is medicine, and aloe is medicine, and all of these amazing medicines right in our garden. And so then their dream, what made them come alive, grew. It grew beyond cannabis, we never excluded cannabis, but it grew beyond that to growing medicine. And food is medicine, and so now we have lots of plants of all different kinds, and we make tea, and we're learning tinctures, and we're learning salt. So now they make a great cannabis that you can actually rub on your joints and stuff. So it was interesting to watch how a seed of what somebody's idea of what makes them come alive grew into something that is now a livelihood. And so they're working now to, they're selling starts, they're graphing fruit trees. We planted a dozen fruit trees, and now they have about 100 of them propagated that they're starting to sell and give away. And so they're actually going to make a living with medicine, plant medicines. And then one of our kids said, art is my thing. And so she incorporates art into everything that we do. And for me, it's ceremonies, so we put a sweat lodge on the site. And one of our sons-in-law kept saying, I can't figure it out, I can't figure it out, I don't know what it is that makes me come alive. And so we had a friend come and put solar panels. We moved into a couple of yurts, we're off the grid, and he helped. So Emilio is our son-in-law, and he helped our friend Tony put up the solar panels, and then he came in the house after that and was like, this is it. this is what makes me come alive. And so now he's learning how to do solar installation. So we have this amazing place. Oh, and then the neighbors, on the other side of them was their brother. And so he said, wow, I feel really grateful that you could help my brother stay in his house. I want to retire, and if you can come up with a chunk of money, enough for me to pay off the house, which isn't that much because he had lived there for a long time, I will hold the mortgage. And then, so you need to give me enough to pay off this house and put a down payment on a house in Maine. And then every month when you pay me your mortgage, I'll use it to pay my mortgage there. So we bought that 12,000 foot lot without a bank. And so now we have all three. And so one of our kids is a vet tech. And she's like, the animals make me come alive. And so we started with 6 chicks. And then we got ducks. And then we got broody chickens who, you can't have roosters in Oakland, so we went to Berkeley Bowl and bought fertilized eggs and put them under the chickens and they hatched. So we have Berkeley Bowl chickens. And then ducks were laying eggs but not sitting on them, so we started putting those under the chickens and they started hatching baby ducks. And it was a real interesting observation in cross-cultural effectiveness because you had these chickens who were raising baby ducks like chickens. So they were pecking around like the chickens, and they thought they were chickens until they found the pond. And then they'd jump in the pond and be like, ooh, this is so amazing. And the mothers were like, we don't do that. So you could just feel the mothers getting more and more anxious as the babies were more and more in the pond. And so in the end, they would roost at night right over the pond. So they were always watching, but we watched them release the babies and let them be who they were. And so it was really powerful. And then our granddaughter said, well, for my 10th birthday, I want a baby goat. So she got a goat. So then we had a baby, and then we had another baby, and then we had 3 pregnant ones. So we just had 5 babies, 2 sets of twins, one of whom is intersex, which is all kinds of education for our grandkids. They're learning a lot. And so each experience of living in this community, we have other people who live there. So when our neighbors, our first neighbors said, okay, we're ready to sell the house, we didn't have any more money. And so Wilson's brother bought it as a placeholder. He doesn't want to live there. So it's being rented out, but it keeps it for when we, so people are moving in now who want to be part of our community. And one of our kids lives in a duplex, and so another activist family moved in. So we're building community in a really organic way, but all centered around this question, what makes you come alive? And so I would encourage you to do some exploration in your own life about what it is that really makes you come alive. And as you put that out and name it and engage it in a community setting, watch what the magic. It's 3:42. Okay, so I guess we're done. Thank you. This whole time, then I would invite you at this point, which I still will do, to close your eyes for a minute or lower your gaze and imagine yourself as an ancestor. And then hold the face of someone that you imagine as a descendant or someone that you actually work with who's younger than you or less experienced than you, somebody for whom you are a mentor or an elder. And as you hold their face in your mind's eye, I'll blow out the candle and you say their name. So I'm going to light the match again. There's one left. Ready? Okay.